There's a new adventure in Heroes vs. Hordes, and this time, the Slime Sage got himself stuck in a cage. But you might be asking yourself, how can something born of a primordial ooze be stuck in a cage? Couldn't he just slither his way through, or maybe just sneeze his way out? Well, turns out he can't, and it's up to you to get him out. So today, I'll walk you through Slime Sage, covering his skills, forge, and globals to get an understanding of what this hero might be like. Now this green booger boy might not look like much, but when you dive into his kit, you'll soon find out he's not that good. Because I'm doing this late in the adventure cycle, I actually have some data on how he performs in various game modes. And it turns out this sludge pudge of questionable hygiene puts up questionable damage numbers. But let's take a look at why. And I'm Coles, a high-level HVH player. You can sign up for my Patreon for monthly HVH giveaways, or check out my website, hvhlounge.com, for a written companion to this guide. So, let's slide into it with the Slime Sage. The first thing to look at for any hero is just their base stats. What do they get from basic level progression, and what does their attack do? The Slime Sage, as you might guess, is a mage in the mage faction and has a magical weapon. Luckily, he is auto-aiming, meaning he turns and faces enemies in order to strike them. His boogers bounce all over the battlefield, hitting one horde at a time. On the level progression side, he actually has a bunch of innate talents that you would take on any hero, starting with +1 projectile and then 5% cooldown. Lastly, at level 140, the Slime Sage gets +3 projectiles for his strong stat bonus. That's a really strong bonus and should help his damage anywhere from 15 to 25%, like most other heroes. While damage and armor are a little bit wonky, he does get magic damage across the rest of his kit. Slime is the core mechanic to the Slime Sage. Each stack of slime has a chance to do additional damage on hit to the target, and then explode and stick on to nearby targets. Juggling slime is going to be a key to whether or not this hero can actually do any damage across all the game modes, which makes now a good time to slip into his skills to understand how this slime mechanic is actually going to do any damage. The Slime Sage's first skill is called Slime Spatter, which he gets at level 40. This ability causes each stack of slime to have a 10% chance to explode, dealing additional damage to the target and spreading to nearby targets. However, it's on the next hit, meaning it has to have one stack in order to potentially explode and apply to other horde. On first read, the 10% chance is pretty low, and it has to already hit an existing horde with slime on it, which doesn't seem like a great combination. That said, he does get new adventure hero scaling, and each additional skill level will up the amount of damage tremendously for each stack of slime. The second skill, at level 80, is called Sludge Pool. They really make you feel like you're dumpster diving with this hero. Sludge Pool occurs when there are 5 stacks of slime and the horde dies. At that point, it leaves behind a sludge pool that stuns other horde and does damage over time. Hitting 5 stacks on any one horde might be pretty hard, because later in the game, usually you clear most horde before you hit them 5 times, which goes back to the same kind of problem I was talking about at level 40 and Slime Splatter. And at level 100, you unlock his ultimate, King Fastidious. This giant king of the goo goblins jumps around the battlefield doing damage when it lands. However, while I thoroughly enjoy watching this guy jump around, the fact that he's got to jump from place to place doesn't bode well for doing damage. So we can see the theme across 3 of his skills, that they all revolve around slime, doing damage over time, and stacking. The problem is, most game modes in Heroes vs. Hordes don't allow for that stacking mechanism. It's the same issue that plagues heroes like Void Raven in doing enough damage in most game modes. Additionally, a lot of these skills require the horde to die, meaning that it won't work in something like Boss Brawl. Instead, you're going to want game modes where you have to hit the same horde over and over again and there's more horde behind them, which makes me believe it might work for something like Nightmare mode. The other one might be something like Hard Mode Arena, assuming these slime stacks do enough damage. The fact that it compounds on each other might allow the Slime Sage to clear out enough horde, but he's going to be super reliant on his forge for any of this to work. Like all recent heroes, Freywood and the team of Swift have done a really good job of using the forge as a way to augment the skills of a hero and not necessarily their weapons. The other great thing about recent forges is that each level of the forge usually has 2 options that both make sense based on the game mode or your play preference, giving you the choice of which one to choose. And meaningful decisions are some of the best parts of video games. At level 1 of the forge, there's Slime Efficiency and Venomous Ooze. Slime efficiency increases the number of slimes applied per stack. Venomous ooze now makes the slime apply 1000% poison damage per second, instead of a slow. Now I'm not exactly sure where that slow came from and where it's going, and I'm not sure what 1000% is of what number, but this is going to be a lot more damage. I think that's what they want you to take away. At Forge level 2, you have Splitius, which makes King Fastidious split into 2, each dealing 50% damage. But that should cover more area on the battlefield, increasing the net damage in the end, particularly if he was already doing overkill damage and wasting that on each bounce. The other option is Gloopy Glasp, which makes Sludge Pool now apply 1 stack of slime for each time a horde goes through it. The important takeaway from all 4 of these options is that they improve the skills or the ultimate, meaning they should significantly amp Slime Sage's damage. Again, this means each one will be viable in different game modes, and it's up to you to choose your own adventure when figuring out how to optimize this adventure hero. See what I did there? It evolves into Goopocalypse via the Duplicator Tome, which is nice because the Duplicator Tome is core to most builds. The Goopocalypse it still bounces amongst Horde, but sets traps along the way and explodes on the final hit, applying slime stacks to all the other Horde nearby. And lastly, at level 5, you have the option between Mini Fastidious and Slimy Amplifier. Mini Fastidious causes a Mini Fastidious to appear at the end of every Goopocalypse. Man, they're making me say some really stupid words. And the other option is Slimy Amplifier, which increases the number of slime applied per Goopocalypse by 2. Going from 1 to 3 per jump is actually pretty big, and that could help you stack slime efficiently enough in order to make it do some damage. Mini Fastidious is a lot more fun, as it creates one of those little gooey goblins and has them jump for 50% effectiveness. As of now, I would wager that Slimy Amplifier is a little bit stronger, but it depends on how many targets you're trying to hit and how powerful this Mini Fastidious really is. And that's the Slime Sage Forge. You can see that at each level, you have the option to increase the amount of slime that gets produced from basically every attack and skill. That should be a decent amp to his damage. But if nothing else, you at least get access to his globals. So let's take a look at those. If there once was a trend for several months of having adventure heroes with no identity and crappy globals, we've at least moved away from the part of no identity. The Slime Sage's globals are actually pretty crappy. They're not as bad as Crystalmancer, which are basically worthless, but they're pretty close. At levels 50 and 70, you get flat increases to magic damage. A lot of the heroes now have really crappy first and second globals, but then get amps at 3 and in their forge to make up for it. Unfortunately, the Slime Sage's level 120 global is an amp against slowed Horde. Now, you could apply slow relatively easy, especially later in the game, but the problem is they nerfed Boss Brawl such that bosses aren't impacted by slow anymore. That means any multiple to slow damage is tremendously less valuable than it used to be. Of course, it'll still help you in Nightmare mode and in Hard Mode Arena if you're trying to squeak out any additional damage. So, does the Slime Sage make up for it in his 3-star Forge? No. His 3-star Forge is a 1.05 times to magic damage, and you'll take multiplicative damage to any of the 3 base types. So I can't really complain about that Forge, it's just not as strong as some other Forges. But looking at his globals as a whole, they're not something I would rush to get and be super excited about. Every single one of the Avatar heroes had tremendously awesome globals, Trapper had really good globals, and even Stormborn's globals are very strong. So while Slime Sage is on your shelf, he's more like a wet mop than any weapon you'd actually really want. So now that we have a background on the Slime Sage, we can take him onto the battlefield and see how he does, at least in try mode. Now try mode is not a great representation of a hero. It lets you see their skills and attacks and get a sense of their animations, but isn't always a great gauge of how much damage they'll actually do. With the Slime Sage, I think it actually does give you a sense of how much damage he'll do. When you load into try mode, he can barely clear any of the Horde. And that's unfortunate. His stacking mechanic just doesn't stack all that fast. And so unless you get a forge that allows him to apply slime more quickly, the Horde will get on you before all of his skills have a chance to proc. I've seen some other data on people that have bought the Adventure Pass and can compare his weapons to things like Bomb or Borer. It's never a great sign when the main hero's damage is below your pet's damage and below some of the other weapons, particularly in something like the end of hard mode. It just means the damage cap without the forge is very low, and getting these things to stack is going to be quite hard. So while I will always be excited for a new hero, and I always suggest getting the adventure hero, and this is no different, he might not be one of the better ones that I've been excited about in recent months, like Stormguard and Trapper. And I'm Coles, the high-level HVH player. You can sign up for my Patreon, where you'll be entered for monthly HVH giveaways. You can also become an executive producer. The executive producers of this video are Cake Invictus, Riverwind, TheWuba, Krabs, Charlos, Dustin, Jason, and Lady Ikiaka. My apologies to Dustin. I've been calling him Dennis for like 2 months now, and he never corrected me. My bad. And I'm never going to say Lady Ikiaka's name perfectly correctly because my mouth just doesn't work like that, but I'll do my best each time, and I look forward to her corrections and a slap in the face whenever she meets me. Please subscribe if you like the video. And remember, always do your adventures! This booger might not be worth the blow. This giant goo goblin